Welcome to our next panel for our Pride celebration here at the Newark Museum of Art. My name is Darrell Duane. I am the coordinator of community engagement and the host for our Equal Space hosted panel today, which is titled Where Are We Going?, which we're going to be focusing on LGBTQ rights and the movement forward in the not only in the urban community, but in communities in general. So with that being said, I want to introduce the moderator for our conversation today. We go way back, and it's so amazing to have him on for our Pride panel this afternoon. So, Medina is a creative strategist and has worked in the design and strategy industry for over 10 years. Medina leads campaigns in an ever immersive media world driven by demanding multicultural millennial audiences. His passion for strategy and design led to the creation of Medina Equal Space, a design collective which I'm sorry, I've read that wrong. Sorry about that. Medina Equal City. I apologize about that. A design collective which delves into the world of print design, web design, multimedia, film production, photography, ongoing, ongoing contributing marketing strategies and social media campaigns. So, with that being said, not only is he all of these things, but he's also an advocate for the community. So, with that being said, I am turning the baton over to our moderator for this afternoon, Medina.
Oh, thank you so much, Daryl. I can't begin to thank you and the Museum of Art for being such an amazing partner and putting this day-long celebration of our community. So I have to thank you so much. Equal Space, thanks to you. The whole campus fallen in love with you and everybody on the Newark Museum of Art's team. They're like officially smitten with you all. And so I just want to thank everybody who is tuning in and who is going to take part in this amazing dialogue. I want to thank my panelists before we even start because they give me life, and I am a huge fan of each of their initiatives in our city. And I also just wanted to break it into this collaboration between Newark Museum of Art and Equal Space is about leading a panel of changemakers, everyday people, activists, and icons who wonderfully represent our diverse community and to discuss our future. Like some of the focal topics we're going to bring to you guys are like Supreme Court rulings, how we truly protect our LGBTQIA plus community, what does it look like to be an ally, but what does it look like more to become an accomplice? And I think that these conversations, especially given how we're dealing with everyday events today, are hugely important. And these people are who are trailblazing and everyday legends doing that work with no spotlight. So thank you all for allowing us to have this moment. Everyone who's watching the museum for allowing us to do this. And is everybody ready to kick it on in? Perv. Let's do this. So I would like to first and foremost give respect to my panelists and give you a little bit, like these are snapshots of the work that they've been able to do. And so I'd love to start with Tyra Gardner Ebony, who's born and raised in Jersey City, New Jersey. She's a Leo, y'all. And at a very young age, she felt different. She did not identify with her outer appearance, although corresponding with her feelings at the age of 4, she tried on her very first pair of heels and never stopped pumping through with that sassiness, which is legendary and she's iconic for. Tyra is in the pursuit of her own happiness, which has led her to be a peer navigator, an empowerment coordinator, and a counselor of HIV testing during her years of volunteering and working for her community. Now she is supervisor at the New Adult Pride Center in Newark. She's won numerous awards, and one of the awards that speak out most is her Marsha P. Johnson Award, which is a Lifetime Achievement Award. She received that award at a very young age, although currently is serving her community with devotion that speaks to a lifetime. I want everybody to just, you can, but you can clap and show love on the platforms for Tyra. Like, yes. She knows I stand for her so much. Equally growing into is Cesare Terrell Adams, known as Pork Chop, who was born August 8th, 1989. For those who want to celebrate him, it's coming up. And it was raised on High Street. Cesare has attended community schools such as Sherman Preschool, Quitman School, Louis A. Spencer, where he has been gifted and talented program moving through to Franklin, New Jersey. In 2014, Cesare became the youngest openly gay candidate in the state of New Jersey and the city of Newark when he ran for city council. His courage and progressive ideas opened ideas for so many, and his concession speech, Cesare promised us that he would keep fighting for Newarkers and that the promise he kept when he accepted the offer from the Newark Police Department to become an officer. Cesare has already received several awards due to his work with the force. But his greatest accomplishment came in February when an interview of him was released by The Advocate on what it's like to be a Black gay cop. In 2014, Cesare was honored as being an up and coming political power 30 under 30. So everybody, please show love and respect to our Cesare.
Woohoo!
I could just keep cheering the whole time. Like this is the best time. And segueing over to my friend, amigo, familia, Julio, who has committed over 20 years of advancing the health, equality, and public health initiatives of Black and brown, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender communities affected by HIV/AIDS and its related health and social disparities. Julio currently serves as the Director of Community LGBTQ and Supportive Services for one of the largest and leading community-based organizations in NJCRI. His experience lays extensively in the areas of advocacy, nonprofit administration, programming, private and public contract management. His public health and marketing campaigns have been seen throughout the city and the tri-state area. He has done research in LGBTQ organizational development for so many. He proudly serves as the founding member and the director for the 20-year-old Project WOW LGBTQ Center and the newly created Pride Center Newark. He's my hero, just like everybody on this panel. So let's show that love for Julio.
Woohoo!
I'm saying we brought it. I told everybody, I promised on social media we would be bringing a panel unlike any other. This is that panel. And I just want to bring in the last and certainly not least, the man who hits a red carpet like no other, Prince Derek Dahl, otherwise known to everyone as Alonzo. He's an American performing artist, media personality, model, brand ambassador, and advocate, all rolled up into a fabulous package. Originally from Shreveport, Louisiana, the multifaceted entertainer has experienced most of his career highlights in the NYC metro area and currently resides in the historic city of Newark, New Jersey. After producing 2 successful seasons of Alonzo's Ugly Truth, which I have watched all of them, on blogtalkradio.com, and hosting an award-winning open mic known as Words Over Lattes, he made history last year as the first openly bisexual artist to perform on a hip hop culture day at Lincoln Park Music Festival, and he lit that stage on fire. In recognition of his contributions to the local community and the creative arts industry, Prince Derek has been named Creative of the Year by Artistic Passion and Purpose. He has continued to digitally work with his newly assembled creative team to ensure his supporters receive new merchandise from his unowned Negro clothing collection. Y'all have to check it out. It's next level gear. He's a solid music project and even more live productions than in previous years, while also continuing to do his advocacy work for the issues that face the Black and LGBTQ plus communities. And I can't thank you enough because his visibility, there are people who can use fame for their own good, and there are people who use their fame to turn a spotlight onto onto what our community faces, and that's really what the Prince Derek does. So I'd like to thank each of the panelists for being here, and thank you so much. You know, when you put the call out, there are people who will always show up, and you guys never ever even stutter. The yes is automatic, so thank you all for that. And I'd like to do like a quick round robin, being respectful and starting with Tara, in case there's a snapshot or a sentence that you'd like people to know about the work that you're doing.
So for me, hold on, you guys, I'm so sorry. Is that echo still going?
No echo.
What's up, everybody? Perfect. Y'all already know how to get down and dirty. You already know who I am. I am the mother of all mothers of New Jersey, baby. And we are out here doing our thing. Happy Pride, honey. Y'all know how we get down and dirty. Okay, now let me be professional. So for the work that I'm currently doing at the Pride Center, I am the supervisor there and also the department coordinator there. We also host, during this pandemic, we are doing everything virtually. So you guys can definitely look out for us at pridecenter.nwk for all of our virtual drop-in center groups and information about how you can still receive services from our agency. So that's definitely something that we're doing right now during this pandemic.
Perfect. Julio, would you like to just, if there's a sentence that again that might encapsulate the work that you're currently involved in?
Hey everyone, I would just say timely, pressing, and urgent. Currently, we're working with the Pride Center of Newark in really trying to address the crystal meth epidemic that's taking place in our tri-state area. So if there was any one word or two words that I choose to really kind of shine light on what we're doing, is timely and urgent.
Yes. Prince? that magic sentence, Prince Derek, that you think would be great for everybody to learn?
For me, it's just about, being who you are and allowing, your presence to create space for you. For me, my work has always been about inclusion and diversity, and just allowing that to free us a little bit more. So, me being in the creative arts industry, it's all about creating the destiny that we want, and that includes everybody. So, just being who you are and letting that create space for you.
Oh, that is a beautiful, holistic way to approach the work, Prince Derek. Thank you so
Beautiful,
much.
beautiful.
Yes, Cesare, speaking of beautiful, bring in your sentence. What's that thing?
Living your truth, owning your handsome, racial and social equality and social justice.
That's what I'm talking about. And Daryl, I'm not excluding you from this. I need your sentence, Daryl.
No, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. As the coordinator for community engagement, my goal and my dream is to actually create more situations like this, to be able to set up more platforms where all parts of our community are being represented, and all parts of our community have a voice. So I'm going to continue to work towards that and continue to create more platforms just like this.
I mean, I think that work, you are hitting those goals, Daryl, because today is a big testimony to the work of the museum and your leadership in bringing this day around. So, I thank you. And I think that this actually, the work that you're doing is so great that you're literally the final word on that, because it really segues into what I'd like to do is our first kind of round robin around the whole panel question, which is, what does LGBTQ plus visibility look like to you? And how do you ensure your existence takes up space in areas not made for us and by us? So it's a two-parter, but I think it's really important to talk about visibility and how, when you're in spaces that make you feel invisible, how you're taking up that space. And I'd love to forward that back over to Julio to begin, and then I'll segue everybody else in. Julio, what does visibility look like to you, and how do you take up space in those rooms I know you're in as the head of so many organizations? Julio, you're muted, papi.
Gotcha. Thank you, City. For me, it's really just being seen and heard for who you truly are. I mean, being able to tell your story and being able to impart your story to others through your own really unique lens of experience, and really being able to do it in a way that is fearless and consistently safe. I think also when you think about visibility when it comes to the LGBT community, we really want to bring to light the intersectionalities that exist in the Black and Brown lives of those folks within the LGBT communities. And when I say intersectionalities, I'm talking about things that affect everything from the delivery of health, finance, and education resource, which I believe must be consistently highlighted and really brought to the surface when we ever really have that opportunity to bring these subjects to the mainstream like what we're doing today. So I think that's a really great way to just encourage that more in-depth conversation. As far as for how I ensure that my existence takes up space, I would say really by showing up and showing out. And I mean that by being unapologetically you, speaking truth to power, and really being informed and educated about the topics that you're being brought to the table to discuss. So really taking the time to invest in knowing what's really being discussed in depth so you can be fully engaged in the conversation. Also, what I found to be a great strategy in my career and working with the community is being able to mentor the LGBT voices that are coming up and being able to provide leadership foundations so that they're able to really sit at the table when you're not able to, or when they are a better fit. So, people call us leaders, but of course we can't be at every table and we can't walk through every door. So I believe just by being able to enhance my presence is taking the time to mentor and develop leaders and LGBT leaders who do want to sit at the table, who do have a story to tell, and is willing to take advantage of the space.
Yes, I could not agree more. And that work in uplifting our community and talking about intersectionality, it's a difficult one, especially given you have to play educator in so many ways. in terrain, and I'm actually going to parallel this because I think there's a connection here on very far extremes between yourself and Cesare. So Cesare, how do you, in terrain that is, we're invisible typically in an industry that we're not highlighted, how are you doing that work and making sure your visibility shows up and that you're taking up that space to advocate for us, especially with, you existing in law enforcement?
It's not the most easiest thing to do, only because in law enforcement, it's kind of what we would call a macho type of field. And you really, before I came on, you really didn't hear about openly LGBTQ people who were in law enforcement. So I'm not saying there wasn't any LGBTQ people in law enforcement, but they weren't as out as I was when I came onto the force. So I was basically breaking two barriers as somebody who was in law enforcement. So it was kind of like a double-edged sword, because it was a shock to them for somebody to live openly in their truth and be unapologetic at the same time. Like anything that's new to any environment, it takes a lot to break down certain barriers and certain discriminatory practices that has been around even before I came on. So for me, one thing that I do is I always speak up and live in my truth no matter what. I don't compromise myself. I don't adjust myself to make anybody feel comfortable. I tell people, you're going to accept me for who I am, or you're just not going to accept me at all. But even though you may not accept me, I'm also not going to tolerate your disrespect of me or anybody else who identify themselves like myself. I also know with the police department that they're taking steps through the consent decree to put in LGBTQ policies, as far as the way we house our trans brothers and sisters, the pronouns that we use, and the sensitivity training that they're going through as well. I have my own personal rendition and feelings about it, as far as as far as how things are going and what I think about how law enforcement treats LGBTQ people as a whole. Just like the same way I feel like they treat African Americans, but that's like a whole.
That could be a panel. That could be a panel all on its own.
Right, it would be a whole panel on its own. I can take up this whole panel all by myself, just talking about it. But I do say that I don't want people to get confused and sucked in on the symbolism.
I think
because the symbolism can kind of throw a smoke screen on the true discrimination that is still going on when it comes to policing, and not even just policing, but in society as a whole, especially when it comes to LGBTQ people.
I couldn't have honestly talked about that more, and I think that it also interconnects, like we're in spaces that are completely invisible where we talk about law enforcement. I think there's some parallels there, and I definitely want to bring Prince Derek on to voice in entertainment that not all the time are people carving out and making statements like you are at every opportunity. So I'm really interested in entertainment where our community is seemingly ever present and moving in all of it. That is not exactly the reality for moving the community forward. So how are you taking up space? How are you finding your tools to advocate?
So for me, I think that with any space that I occupy, I'm kind of like Cesare, this is what you're gonna get. I own my own being. And that means that however I decide to present is a choice that I make, because that is what I feel. This is how I choose to express. And I believe that everyone has that sovereign right to be who they want to be in this existence. And I carry that with me. As an entertainer, I understand that I'm allowed to build a brand that can, infuse imagination and can use surrealism in a way that draws in attention. But like I said, it's a conscious choice to say, okay, well, now that I've gotten your attention, kind of like the little dancing monkey, let's talk about the real issues that are facing people that look like me, that live like me daily. And in that particular industry, what I've grown to feel is like we have so many different LGBTQ entertainers, singers, actors, and things like that, who, what you see on TV is that they're creating a space for inclusion and diversity. But behind the scenes, it feels like we're being used as more like a marketing ploy, because they know that we bring in the dollars. We're the spenders. Economically, it makes sense to appeal to LGBTQ communities. We're consumers, and we move culture forward, and to make sure that not just to entertain you, but to make sure that our lives are protected. I think I saw a post maybe yesterday where, there were 6 Black trans women that died within 7 days. So when we're occupying these spaces, I'm expecting to see, people like the Billy Porters, and I love Dominique Jackson on post like this. These are the issues that we want to talk about. These are the moments where we get to take up these platforms and speak to things that affect our community and expect those persons making money off of us to actually take action. And so that's what I hope to do. And I hope that whatever space I occupy, I'm able to amplify those messages, and and that's how we'll be able to make change from where we are.
And I got to tell you that I have, my background is that I work in media, and I have seen moments, Derek, where even without saying words and standing in the space in your fullness, MTV really have to sit with itself on understanding the spectrum and understanding gender fluidity and androgyny and what that looks like. And I felt like that shot, seeing you there, I couldn't have been more proud, because you literally had to say nothing. It was just standing in your presence was a powerful moment for us in media. So I definitely wanted to talk about that. And that's why I think it tandems so well talking about Tyra, in that her everyday action, everyday existence. Tyra, you were making that message and carving out space, but how does it look like to you, like your visibility and your taking up space in rooms not for you?
So for me, it may be a little bit different from everyone else. So my visibility is more so being out there, being loud, showing up in spaces where people may not know that I am trans, but giving them a gag factor at the end of a presentation, like how we did a presentation for the law enforcement. And, afterwards, I just stood up and said, yeah, because I'm trans and I want, you guys to treat us with the utmost respect. And it was a shocker, because they didn't know who is this young girl giving this training or everything like that, and anything that I do. So I make sure that regardless of the fact, because I feel like a lot of people who are trans don't want to put that out in the forefront, and that is for whoever you are. You have the opportunity to do so. For me, I'm so comfortable in who I am and in my skin and in my body. I can care less about people asking me difficult questions. I can care less about going into places where you may be getting attacked or something like that. I like to, how do I say that? I like to challenge the society on the norms of what they feel like a trans woman looks like or act like or be like, and break those type of chains where it's like, okay, we're still human, we're still people, we are people that do the same things that you guys do. It's just a little bit heightened, a little bit more fashion. I don't understand what's wrong with that, but like I said, for myself, going into places, I'm always loud. Everybody knows me. I'm loud. When I come through the door, I'm a room shaker. So it's just like, it's hard to miss me. It's hard to not notice that Tyra is not here, or Tyra is here and nobody's paying her any attention or anything like that. I use that as a platform. I use live as a platform. I use anything that I do as far as work is concerned as well to uplift anybody that is going through any changes or hurt or anything like that. So I think that's what I do, and I bring for my visibility, and what I do to break down these places where we're not really welcomed or so. I just go in there head high and very much confident.
I have to say that that's really felt like, and you've shook a room. We've been on panel, and I've seen you shake a room. And that speaks to the presence, that speaks to the power and the personality. It also speaks to just the interconnectedness between yourself and Julio, which I would like to get into some, more one-on-one questions now, because I'm about to get into my interview. Hold on.
Let's go. Let's go.
So Julio, you and Tara have such, a relationship together, professional, family, chosen family. As the founder of Pride Center Newark, what insight do you have for others interested in providing brave and inclusive spaces for the LGBTQ community? And just unmute yourself, my love.
Always forget that one.
I'm here for you. Don't worry. I've got you.
Thank you, sir. So I think in your journey in wanting to create an inclusive, safe space for LGBT people, it's really important to really understand the why factor. Why is this important to me? Why is it important to the idea of wanting to create an LGBT safe space? Sometimes some of us are mandated to because we work for a university or a hospital or a company. But other times as community leaders, we may realize that safety is a primary need within our community. And so, just in my own career and working with other LGBT leaders around the country who desire to build an LGBT center or a safe space, I always encourage them to really think about why must it exist now? And what is the urgency between today that's really going to propel your story and your conviction to others when you're trying to sell them on the idea of partnerships and strategic collaborations. Also, I encourage anyone who's interested in really wanting to develop a space to really become intimate with that reason of why and why now, because you're going to be saying it over and over and over again as you try to develop the space and you try to build community partners and strategic partnerships. Folks always are interested in the what you're doing, but it's the why that's really going to draw them into the storyline of why it's important to create a space today for LGBT people. Naturally, when working with folks who are interested in creating these spaces, once they think about the why, they jump directly into the mission, right? You understand why the space is needed, you understand why it's urgent. And what I find is that it's important to slow down a bit from jumping into the mission of the space and really begin to try to understand the community that you're looking to service, right? So you have a great idea, you was chosen to perhaps lead in the initiation of creating a safe space, but now we have to think about who are going to be our allies within the community and what community we're actually serving. The LGBT community is so expansive and so big. I think sometimes we get clumped into this one lump of clay where we have so many subgroups within the community that it's really valuable to think about who are we looking to create the space for? What is the messaging behind what this space will do? And also, how do we begin to engage the community so that we can become informed in the process? So understanding who we're going to serve, understanding what the space is going to mean for the community. So that will involve bringing LGBT members together into a room and really trying to figure out in discussion, what are their attitudes, what are their beliefs, what is their knowledge about the issues that they feel are facing them, and how could a safe, inclusive space serve the purpose of being able to include them in a process where maybe they felt they were excluded out of. When we're thinking about the social unrest and we think about some of the inequalities that exist, not only within Black and Brown communities, but also the LGBT community, I have found that most LGBT members are looking for social networks of folks that they can connect with, that they're able to find safety within, and that they're able to build a strong network and connection with. Especially as a lot of LGBT people are beginning to experience or have been experiencing not only the traumas of the past, but the traumas that we're really seeing every single day relating to the unrest around the country. And then just understanding your mission, right? Once you bring this group of community together, I will encourage anyone who's interested in creating a space to really take that knowledge, really sit with it, really sit with some of the uncomfortability that comes with some of the information you're going to receive, and really begin to look at what is the mission overall for a space that you're looking to build or that you're looking to create. Mission is important. Many people want to be tied to a progressive movement, and they want to be tied to something that they believe in. So in creating an inclusive safe space, it's really important to understand where you're going and how do you communicate that mission to other community members that are looking to be a part of it. And that's where storytelling takes a huge place in being able to communicate that effectively.
That's a great one, and I'm gonna let Daryl segue into some of the question side.
Sure. I'm glad that we are on this topic of community, right? So we're talking about community, and we're talking about influence and how we influence our community, and what platforms we use to influence our community. So this next question is for the panelists, but more specifically for one of the biggest influences in our community. We're going to pass this question to Derek Prince. So from your viewpoint, as an influencer in the entertainment industry, how can one do better and use their influence to correct misconceptions about the LGBTQ plus community? How would you best use that platform to clear the air, for lack of better words, about how people perceive the community and what's the reality of the community?
Okay, so that's a wonderful question. I think that, there are tools that have been provided to us. Sometimes it's not really relatively important to recreate the wheel, so to speak. Right now, we live in a social media era where everything is at your fingertips. Everyone is able to share their own story. And so for me, as an influencer, I think that, like I said before, just appearing and being your authentic self and, showing that I'm human first is how I try to relate to people in sharing my story, whether it's a good time, whether it's a bad time, just connecting on a human level that we all share the same struggles underneath the surface, but this is a unique perspective on this thing, or based on situations that are happening, I may post about it, and then let's open conversation. I think for me in the past 2 years, the focus has been about having the conversation. I'm a co-host for Court Millennials the Key, which is an online talk show where we talk about different things that are affecting our community. And I think because we're able to connect and kind of bring our social circles together, because we're all connected to different types of people, but integrating into those different, sectors, whether it's with has to do with Black or brown people, or whether it has to do with the silent B in the LGBTQ community, or whether it's talking about finances, those who are in the finance sector, and just trying to find ways to integrate yourself into conversations and then speaking your truth about your experiences in them. And so I feel that whatever tool that you have, like Tara said, whatever platform, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, speaking at events or being on panels like this, take every opportunity to share your story, to share your perspective and your opinion. I think for us now, it's more about speaking up. There's been so long where we've been silenced, where we felt that it was safer for us to just be quiet and just kind of go under the radar, literally for our own safety. But I think that era is over. There's so much access and we need to take advantage of it. So I choose to use my influence, whatever platform I'm on, to speak to those things, and I encourage everyone else to do the same thing. Don't be afraid to speak up.
Amen.
I love the honesty. I love the honesty and the candidness, right? So Medina, I don't know if you wanted to expound more on that.
I think that really, that shook everybody on the amen side, right? Like when you find yourself, and that's this whole panel, when you find yourself hearing something that someone's saying, you're nodding your head because you're just like, I have been in that situation. And for me, that's rare air to breathe, right? To hear someone put words to a feeling that we've had but never voiced. And I think that one of the ways that we're always trying to, and Daryl can also nod, that we talk politics all the time. I think our community has become very active in politics. And I think adding that note to how we shake things up is a really great way to bring in Cesare's voice on asking him, what forms of legislation and programs would most benefit disenfranchised LGBTQ plus members in the long term rather than the short term community. And I think that you have seen those. You have seen like short term promises on the campaign trail, and then you have known always this is not the kind of legislation that long term is going to help our community. As you weigh in, Cesare, Julio, please feel free after him to expound, because I know you really actively through NJCRI are in the legislative rooms too.
There has been a lot of, but most noticeably, let's talk about the Supreme Court ruling that just passed, where it has been illegal to fire anybody based off of their sexual orientation or the way they identify themselves. People need to understand that before the Supreme Court ruling, that it was still legal to do that. So they always question on why we fought so much, why we were still fighting, and it's because of legislation like that, to where if I'm somebody who identified as gay or trans or bi or whatever, I can still be fired because of that. I think also other legislation that has been passed. I think I'm not going to say too much legislation. I think more in certain career fields and jobs that they put a lot of policies in place to be more LGBTQ friendly, to where they try to make the environment more comfortable. But again, there's like anything that's new, you have a long way to go, because we're basically now, especially my generation of those who identify LGBTQ, we're coming and kicking the door down. We're not taking crumbs. We're no longer trying to ask for a seat at the table. We're basically demanding a seat at the table, and you're going to give us our just due, or we're going to have problems. We're going to be rallying in front of your business all day, every day. We're going to be petitioning to get certain policies changed, or make sure that whatever supervisor or coworker that's being discriminatory or racist gets removed. We're going to set up petitions and make phone calls and make sure that things actually get changed. I think for us, and I keep connecting this to the Black Lives Matter movement, because I know a lot of things, and I know I'm kind of jumping off course, because we hear the argument of defund the police, or we hear the argument of that like to abolish police and this and the third. And one of the things I even spoke about, even with when it comes to sensitivity training, not just in the Newark Police Department, but in any department, when I went around the country to speak about it, we can have these discussions all day, every day, far as sensitivity training is concerned. But if you're not changing your policies within these individual departments or corporations, then we're going to keep fighting the same fight, just like my grandmother and my ancestors were doing 50 years ago. And we're still fighting their same fight today. So if we're not changing policies, if we're not changing laws that benefit us as LGBTQ people, like we did when we fought for marriage equality, like we did just recently now, we fought that, to make it illegal to fire us because of the way that we identify ourselves, or the fact that, or our sexual orientation. If we don't do that, then we're going to keep fighting this fight 50 years later when I'm an old man and I can barely walk.
I mean, listen, that you got some time on that one. You got some time on that whole not walking, but what you're saying is walking on either extreme within the system or outside of the system can be as effective. And I think as we all celebrate, or at least acknowledge the transition of one of our longest freedom fighters, and Representative John Lewis passing, I think we all are feeling that cause from so many different angles, many dimensions of what it is to be, in the LGBTQIA, is to keep those legacies going. Julio, did you have something to add on that legislative? Because I know you're always having to sit in those rooms.
Well, you know what? Unfortunately, enough, I'm able to work with organizations that really take the lead in a lot of the negotiation and policy work. So I'm privileged to do a lot of the support piece that happens behind that. So organizations like the Hyacinth Foundation, the Transgender Legal Defense Fund, have been really instrumental, especially in New Jersey, with other organizations, in making sure that, this particular Supreme Court ruling mandate really did stay in play. So just to add on to what Cesare added, in just one, really encouraging that we continue to vote, And then we not only continue to vote and encourage other LGBT members to vote, but that we are actually in the planning process of how voting is done in our cities, how voting registration locations are chosen, and really make an effort to really insert ourselves into some of these processes that really determine where voting stations take place and where access to voting is most easy for disenfranchised populations or populations that may find it difficult to reach an access voting site. I think it's important also, you know, in the city of Newark, we have amazing LGBT leaders who are already in politics, who I believe we can begin to identify and really begin to support even further in their development as it pertains to leadership development and political development. I think we just overall need to provide campaign and fundraising and communication support for LGBT candidates who are wishing to enter the field here in the state of New Jersey. And also with the idea of increasing the number of LGBT elected officials that we have. When LGBT elected officials are in the room, they tend to humanize our lives, they impact policy and legislative debate, and most importantly, they influence their straight lawmakers and colleagues to vote in favor of equality in some of these measures. So there's a real human aspect that takes place when we have people who can really communicate those concerns to their straight allies that are sitting with them up on the Hill. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts, and as well as giving some of our local officials and up and coming leaders the tools that they need to access mentorship from some of our more well-developed leaders in the state and really just around the nation.
I think all three of you all hit on something really important there about the politicizing of pushing the movement forward, right? Because unfortunately, we live in a climate now where everything's politicized, right? And one would think that these are simple human rights issues, right? So there shouldn't be a big play on politics. But we find, like I said, in our current climate, that that's not the case. Even down to something as simple as wearing a mask for the safety of others has been politicized, right? So with that, Chazare spoke to it earlier in regards to Black Lives Matter, but I want to sort of piggyback to that thought process. So in the world of Black Lives Matter and inclusivity conversations leading to Black Trans Lives Matter, right? How do we ensure that conversation about topics of social justice are inclusive and don't ignore the struggles of others within a pan identity group? And I'm going to refer this question to Tyra, if Tyra would like to chime in first, and then maybe anyone else who would like to piggyback after that.
So when it comes down to the Black Lives Matter movement, I think people forgot that it started with two lesbian women, right? And the fact that when you talk about Black lives doesn't mean women, men. It doesn't mean children. It means everybody under the umbrella of who is identified as Black, African American. So which includes trans, lesbians, gays, bisexual, whatever you consider yourself to be. And I feel like that people are forgetting that portion of it. And I feel like that is dividing us as a community itself, being Black. It's dividing us in a way where it's like, if we are not being cohesive and including all Black lives in the Black Lives Matter movement, we are never going to win. Black trans lives is well important as well as anybody else's life. No one is talking about any of the Black trans lives who has passed away in much of media. Glad that social media and people who are knowing these individuals who passed away, not passed away, who were murdered, posting it and getting it out there more and more and more now. And I feel like, with the media itself, they need to start doing these stories. They need to, start putting us out in the forefront where it's letting people know, like, it's not okay to just throw us under the rug and say, oh, okay, or call us by our regular name, our given name, born names, and things like that to identify someone who is of a trans experience. I feel like people are going to continuously to do that if no one speaks up about it and no one says anything about it. When it goes back to these movements and these protests and all the work that the people are doing, if you are showing that all Black lives matter, including everyone under the umbrella of Black lives, it will be a greater fight to fight.
And interestingly enough, you brought up that piece about continuing to keep the light on those lives that have been murdered due to the circumstances that they happen to be trans. I want to take this question and also pose it to Prince in regards to someone who uses their platform to speak on a regular basis to this specific community. Did you have any thoughts on how to keep the social justice component inclusive in our everyday conversations, especially those within a pan identity group?
Yes, I think kind of landing back to my previous answer about taking full advantage of the devices that we do have. Tyra said that we do live in the age of social media. I do believe that if we did not have these devices, we probably would not hear these stories. And though it's a tough pill to swallow when considering mainstream media and what our contribution is to it, to the vitality of entertainment, of news, and how we work behind the scenes, I think that it does fall on us to continue to speak up about our stories. It also kind of, and it's sad that it takes so much fight for us to be humanized, right? To say that we are part of this experience just like you are, and at the end of the day, regardless of how we present or how we identify, we're human too, and our lives matter. People are killing us for just wanting to exist, right? And that's whether Black or brown or people of the trans experience. But it takes us being intersectional, and it takes us, working together with organizations like what Julio works with, the people that give us the information, working with law enforcement officers to make sure that once we get these policies in place, that they are being enforced, that if you are a person that identifies as trans or binary, you should feel comfortable calling the cops if there's an issue. But most times people don't want to call them because you don't feel like you're going to be safe when you do call them. Especially if you are a double or triple minority, if you're a person of color and you identify outside of a heteronormative standard. And then requires people like Tyra who are willing to put themselves in their lives on the forefront to tell their story. And like you said, it's about constantly appearing authentic and humanizing yourself so that people can relate to it. It's something that requires a lot of work, and I feel like it should not, for me to say I'm human just like you, and pulling on the empathy of people, and that is how we end up, making an impact. Is that our daily work is to remind people, hey, we are all in this human experience together. We're all in this human experience together. And if you hurt me, you're hurting yourself. When it comes to the Black Lives Matter thing, I wanted to kind of go back a little bit. When we think about the foundation of the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a specific mission, and it was about addressing and advocating against the police brutality that was happening against Black people. That was the main focus at the time, was attacking police brutality, calling it to the world, shining a spotlight on that. And I think what happened is that the slogan was not necessarily matching the mission when it came to other Black lives being lost for other reasons. And so now we're sitting in this space where, well, if you want me, and if you look at history, a lot of the Black movements or civil rights movements in particular, some of the organizers were Black gay men and Black lesbians and people with trans experience. We talk about Pride, and Pride was a riot that was led by a Black trans woman. So it's like our bodies have always been on the front line fighting for these issues. We're the ones that are the fearless ones, right? This is supposed to be the land of the free and home of the brave. Well, we're brave enough to fight for our freedom, but who's fighting for us? Why is it that we're so ready to show up for you, and then when we have an issue and we want to bring the bullhorn to our issues, you disappear on us? And I think that we're just in a space where we're tired of not getting back what we've been giving. And so it's very important for us to walk into these spaces with each other and say, hey, this hurts me. This is what's hurting me, and how do we work together to fix that hurt? I recognize what is hurting you. I recognize that Black men are dying at the hands of police, and we want it to stop. I recognize that Black women and children are not being protected in this country. I recognize that there's this wealth gap that keeps us oppressed, but I'm being oppressed by that as well because I'm Black, and then within my own community, I'm being oppressed because you don't value my life as much as you value your own. And those are the tough conversations that usually start within your own family. And that's another thing. Like, how do we start and expand our influence? Influence starts at home. You know, are you having these conversations with your brothers and sisters, your cousins, your aunts, your uncles? And are they going to carry this to their churches? We talk about politics. Well, in order for us to get LGBTQ politicians in place, we're going to have to support them from where they are. We're going to have to see them when they're running organizations like NJCRI or being part of movements like the POP, or if they're leading rallies. We have to show up for them and show them that we support them, and being better allies within our own community first, amplifying the messages, taking advantage of resources that we do have, and then pushing them and standing by them, just like we would stand by any other person. When you see other subgroups of people, there's a moment where you see them strategizing together. It is so hard for us to get in a room together and strategize for whatever reason, and to stand beside each other and push forward together. And that's something that I feel that we need to work on. Listening to each other, empathizing with each other, and meeting each other human first will allow us to create that space for more conversations where I hear you, I connect to you, you hear me, you connect to me. Now we're in that space, we can develop a plan and work together. So I believe that when it comes to the trans issues, we just have to hear them better. And that goes for gays, bisexual,
Right.
lesbian, all of that. We need to hear them when they speak. And we need to let them be the faces of their movement. All too often we get in this space where we want to be allies, and then, we've seen our allies stand in front. When it comes to civil rights movements or the women's movement that was started by college-educated Black women, it was overtaken by allies, and then they became the face of the movement, and they took advantage of whatever came with it, right? That privilege shifted to them. And I feel my fear is that the same thing is going to happen when it comes to these trans issues. Yes, we can be allies for those who may or may not identify, but we have to push their stories to the front, and we have to stand behind them, in support of them, amplifying and letting them know that we're here with you. We stand with you. This is important to us, and we're not going to let anybody else take your narrative away or make you be silent. So creating that space, giving them a platform like you've done today, that's how we're going to be able to change this thing moving forward. And it just has to have this ripple effect where we're encouraging others to do the very same thing.
And one more thing, respect goes a long way. I feel like just being respectful can definitely break some of those barriers as well.
And since we're on this topic, I think it's imperative too that we also rally some of the voices from our community. So our chat has been open throughout our conversation, and there are some really important questions that I think are pertinent with the topic that we're currently on. And this question, I'm going to, so we're our time is sort of dwindling away. So I want to make sure that we be mindful of our responses, just so that I can get everybody's response in specifically on this next question, because it has to talk about the disenfranchisement within the community itself, right? So Kiara's question says, can you speak to navigating and addressing discrimination and other social injustices experienced by minorities in the LGBTQ plus community from others who are also a part of the LGBTQ plus community? I think that's a topic that we don't really touch on like we should, but people of color who are a part of this community can readily speak to the inequalities that they face, that their non-people of color in this community don't have to face those same inequalities. So I'm gonna start off first with Chazare, and then Tyra, I want you to sort of chime in on that as well, okay? So Chazare, your thoughts?
Yes, I'm gonna make it quick because I know you said we're short on time. I'm gonna piggyback on one thing. I think us as LGBTQ people, we support a lot of these organizations like POP and other organizations a lot, and we always show up to their marches. But when something is specifically dedicated to LGBTQ, marches, we don't get we don't get the same support. So I don't think that we don't support them. I think the problem is that they don't support us, and we always is showing constant support for them, no matter what. But if anything is ever specifically identified, like LGBTQ, is always a problem with this not just pop in general, but any organization is always a problem with them to come support us. So I'm just going to say that on that matter. But when it comes to this discrimination within the LGBTQ community, I tell people all the time, don't think that it's not discrimination within the LGBTQ community. Just like I tell people, just because I put on that uniform doesn't mean all of a sudden that discrimination towards me as a Black male all of a sudden erases because now all of a sudden I'm a law enforcement officer. People need to understand that in any spectrum that we involve ourselves in, there's always discrimination and there's always prejudices. People always say, even if you bring up the 2016 election, why is it that so many people, why was so many lesbians, white lesbians, and or white gays or bisexuals or white trans voted for Donald Trump? I had to tell people, because they're not looking at their sexuality first. They're looking at the color of their skin first, because for them, their white lives and their privilege matters at the end of the day. You can call a Caucasian person whatever you want in the book, but they're always going to have that privilege of one up in any other race because of their skin color and the laws that are put into place to make sure that particular race is always one step ahead or two steps ahead of everybody else. So even if you look at within the LGBTQ community, gay males as a whole, whether Black or white, discriminated against trans people for a very long time, and it still happens to this day. I know we brought up Sylvia and Marsha P. Johnson as well. We have to think these two women are the ones who really started the rebellion. I don't like to say riot. I like to say rebellion, because that's what it was. It was a rebellion, just like Black Lives Matter movement is a rebellion against our oppressors. And the same thing happened with the rebellion that Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia started. It was a rebellion against their oppressors. Even though we know they were the ones who kind of started that rebellion, they were ostracized and kicked out by the community that they identified themselves with, because it's so much hate and discord within any community. It's disgusting. And I'm going to touch back on the minority communities, such as African Americans and other minority communities. And when you talk about LGBTQ, the trans community, and I get so disgusted because we fight each other so much that we miss the message. And I'm going to talk about it with politics, because even if you look at Democrat, Republican, I told people all the time, let's look at the political spectrum, and shout out to RBG, because she is holding on for dear life. The Republican Party understood that they were going to lose either the Senate or they were going to lose the House of Representatives. So to them, they thought, well, what was the most powerful thing for us to keep our power? And they said the Senate. So now when we're trying to figure out why is it that so many judges are being approved, conservative judges that are being approved on these appeal courts or on the Supreme Court, it's because Republicans thought white first. They thought of themselves first. So when I'm out here having these discussions with people, I always try to emphasize to people that we need to think about self first. We need to think about our own self-interest first. And Black people are to me one of the most forgiving races in America. We can forgive somebody in a snap of a finger and forget like nothing has ever happened. And so that's
Cesare, just weighing in on some of the nuggets, because you are speaking truth to power right now on so many different fronts.
I'm not gonna pass it on.
No. But I don't want to lose that a lot of what we think is a united front, because we promised a real panel, and I think we're delving into these real segments in our own community of putting privilege first. Mm-hmm. As opposed to seeing it as a united front, or even empathizing to fight with our trans brothers and sisters in the fact that they are last of last in so many ways. And I just wanted to open the floor there for Tyra to speak to that truth of the question. And then Daryl, you want to repurpose the question to Tyra so she can
Yeah,
weigh in there too.
sure. Really quickly, so ultimately, the question reads, so how can we speak and navigate in addressing discrimination and other social injustices experienced by minorities within the LGBTQ plus community from others who are also a part of the LGBTQ plus community? How do we fight hating each other?
Right. So, you know, I got to get my shades because it's this community, you know, it's a very shady thing. And if you don't know what shade is, it's just a little thing that you do when you want to put somebody else down or have people laugh at another person. It's a shady type of vibe when it comes down to our own communities. And I feel like because people feel like they're better than one another, people want to be in competition with one another. And all of those aspects of you know, being inside the community. With being trans itself, you and another trans girl, oh, I'm more realer than you. I look prettier than you. Oh, I have the biggest breast. Or, you know, it's always some type of competition when everybody's walk of life and under this umbrella of being in the LGBT community are different. That was the whole purpose of, for me, I feel like people forget that there are different, when you think about T, when you think about L, when you think about B, there are different, under those umbrellas, there are different people that walk different lifestyles. Some people are more flamboyant. Some people are more tamed and quiet. Some people are both. Some people are doing whatever they do, what they feel like they do. And it may not be something that you like or you're into. Like, I'm a voguer. I vogue. I'm in the ballroom community. I can't go to a white trans woman and talk and tell her like, oh, well, you know, hey, yes, you know about this ball that's going on or whatever. She's gonna most I'm not gonna say all, most of them look like, well, what is that? And it's awesome to see, like, if people are accepting of the information and wanting to learn and eager to learn, than to reject and say, oh, well, that's just, you know, not my thing, or look at me in a way. It was like, you know, it's always like this shady type of look and demeanor of when someone who, like myself, has a bubbly behind spirit.
We adults, you good.
Bubbly behind spirit. When it comes into the room, it turns up some people's noses. And I have been a witness of that before, coming into a room. And you know me, I'm very loud, I'm very out there, like I said. And people don't take me, a lot of people who are like me, but as far as, like, you know, our white counterparts inside of this spectrum of community, don't really view me as a professional person, because I'm more entertainment. I'm loud and bold and all of those things. And I feel like that can hurt a person's you know, who they are, who they present to each other. Why? Because I'm so loud and out there, I'm not as professional as you because you're quiet. I don't, you know, those are things that happen in between our own communities that we face every day. I mean, literally every day we face these type of issues and problems, and then they want to know why we look at them a certain way. Then they want to know why we try to distance ourselves instead of trying to become more of a bridge in the community.
I mean, I will throw my laptop. I was just telling Alonzo too, I will throw my laptop with the truths you are all dropping. Like, that is what I'm talking about. And so we are actually in a wrap up, but I wanted to do one last closing rapid fire question. Y'all ready for this one? Just yes. A rapid answer, rapid question. And then we're going to start with Julio and then go through, and then we're going to close it. And we promise we be on time. It's a long run of show for the museum, so I want to make sure we don't turn up the party too long. But here's my question. What is one thing that can shift someone from being an ally into an accomplice? And let me just, for everyone who's looking, an ally will mostly engage in activism by standing with an individual or group in a marginalized community. An accomplice will focus more on dismantling the structures that oppress that individual or group. And such work will be directed by the stakeholders in that marginalized group. So being an accomplice does not mean you step into leadership. It means you step to break it down and support those who are leading. What's one thing that someone can do from moving from allyship into accomplice? Julio, please.
I would say if you have the ability to put LGBT people in certain positions within structures that are built to oppress the LGBT community, that's one way to do it.
Yes. Cesare?
I was going to piggyback off what he said. I was going to go with the fight, far as like policy is concerned, and making sure that people who identify themselves as us are put into not just put into, oh, I'm just going to hire this one person to work for our company, but actually put somebody in leadership who can create an impact on multiple levels. And I think that's how you kind of shift the narrative from one thing to another. Don't make it a moment thing, but make it a movement as far as with your support with us.
Don't make it a moment, make it a movement. Everyone put it on a t-shirt I'm buying first.
Like
Right? I'm just saying, Prince Derek, please, your way in that one thing.
Shifting from ally to accomplice would also mean that you are utilizing the privilege, whatever privilege that you have, whether it is male privilege, whether it is white privilege, whether it is education privilege, taking that privilege and shifting the access to resources that you've gained with that privilege to those who do not have it. So when it comes to LGBTQ issues, take your privilege and then give us those resources that we need to push ourselves.
Yes, say that again. What? Tyra, would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So you said we're gonna be real, right?
Yeah, make it happen.
You said to be real. Okay, so I really feel like a lot of people, all of us, not just different communities. I think we need to remember that instead of you doing it because you're getting paid to do it because you want to do it. That will be the biggest difference of you utilizing your own feelings and heart. And if you're really into what you're putting out there and who you're respecting and who you're fighting for, because you have people that say, like, it's also that's in your families that are doing the same thing. So if you put that same passion into, putting it more out on the forefront or breaking those barriers down where you have power in those in those fields, I think that would definitely shift
that is a way to end it. And what I can say is profoundly, and I'm going to add for just to wrap this up, my one final thought on being an ally and being an accomplice is you need to stop and listen, but do the work yourself. Do the work of everyone on this panel of explaining and being in leadership is exhausting and traumatizing. But if you do want to be an accomplice and walk alongside us in dismantling the systems of obstruction that really counter our progress every day, and we shine in spot of it, do the due diligence of doing the work and using your power, whatever capacity you have it, to uplift the people in our community who are last to be heard. And so that is why I want to thank everyone on this panel for contributing to this dialogue. The chat box has been really lit up with so much thanks for what you do every day. And I'm glad that we at Newark Museum were able to give a highlight to the work, because you do this work with no spotlight. You do this work in the spotlight. You do this work when you go to sleep. Thank you for that. I, as the founder of Equal Space, immensely thank you. You're the reason why I built a space where we can be brave and safe. I want to also turn this over to close, because there's so much more going on today, to Daryl of the Newark Museum of Art.
Thank you so much, Medina, for being a part of this panel and for moderating this panel and gathering this wonderful panelists that we have here to discuss these very important topics. So thank you all. And you're absolutely correct. The day is not over. We have a lot more to go. We have up next our exclusive video drop in partnership with our community partners, the New Jersey Devils. We're going to be dropping a Q&A session watch party video on our Facebook Live, which is if there's a portion that is already running on New Jersey Devils website. This is Eli. Well, we have the wrap up, the continuing portion of that video that we're going to drop on our Facebook Live now for our watch party. I'm sorry, getting tongue tied because I'm so excited about everything that's happening. But after that, we have our virtual fashion show with Marco Hall, along with our happy hour with DJ Kenneth Carrell, which we will have an after party afterwards. So not only are we interviewing him and we're making cocktails, which I hope to see all of you there, we're going to also be having a jam session a little later for the VIP room. So we're going to encourage you all to make sure to register for that. With that being said, again, thank you all for attending, and we look forward to seeing you through the rest of today's programming. Have a great one.
Yes.
Yes.
Bye.
Thank you guys. Let's
Thank
celebrate.
you.
Let's
Have
keep
a
it
good one.
going.
Thank you so much again.
Y'all are so
Bye,
beautiful. I love you all.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.